Let's take a look now at how we can build off of existing AutoCAD plans in SketchUp. So the first step we want to do is import a DWG into SketchUp. So we can go to File and choose Import. We want to make sure that our files of type is set to AutoCAD DWG files. We can also import the DXFs, but for our class files we're going to pull in a DWG. Now, the Options button on this open dialog box, this tells us we can choose to merge coplanar faces and orient faces consistently. It's good to leave these guys checked on. They don't necessarily always do clean up your entire model, but for the most part they can kind of get the ball rolling on getting things cleaned up. The important one, or the important two settings here, are our units. Once we import a DWG, we want to verify that the import is pulled in at the right scale. So it's either going to be, it's usually off by a scale factor of 12, so it's either feet or inches. So I know that the files that we're importing, the default units are in inches, so we're going to leave that set to inches. And we also want to leave our preserve drawing origin checked on, and that's what's going to let us pull things in and let them stack on top of each other. So we'll say OK, and then I'm going to import floor plan 1. We'll choose Open. Okay, so here's our import results. Not interested too much in that. We'll close it, and here's our first floor plan. So now I can kind of orbit around and check that out. On this floor plan, you can see we have some windows, some doors, front door, stairs. So this is all, this all comes in as basic geometry in SketchUp. So these are all edges, no surfaces, just edges. So what we want to do is select all of this stuff. With my selection tool, I'll just draw my selection window around it, and then I'll right click on my selection and choose Make Group. So we want to go ahead and make that entire CAD drawing a group. Then I'm going to right click on it and choose Lock. So it's important to keep your CAD drawings or your CAD backgrounds locked. That way you don't actually accidentally nudge them out of the way or delete them or move them. So we're going to keep that locked. Okay, so modeling from this CAD plan, the common tendency would be to want to fill in these surfaces and create surfaces in SketchUp and then extrude it vertically. And there's one big problem with this, and that is that most CAD plans are not perfectly drawn. A lot of people don't adhere to the standards, and they'll just have things kind of off axis and not drawn correctly. Maybe edges don't meet. So typically it's best to just lock that CAD drawing as a background and then basically recreate it. So it's okay though, it's really easy to recreate. We can use our rectangle tool. I'll start in this bottom corner and draw a square in. So, you can see it's 5.5 by 5.5, and then we'll use our push-pull tool. I'm going to pull it up by let's say 10 feet. And we'll assume that this townhouse or whatever has 10-foot ceilings. Now what I'm going to do is use my push-pull tool, and we're going to extrude the plan horizontally rather than vertically. So I'll click once with my push-pull tool. Before I do that, let's keep in mind the hotspot of the push-pull tool is at the tip of the red arrow. So I can point the tip of that red arrow at my surface, click once to start, tap Control or Option on the Mac, and move my cursor and point that arrow right at that window. Now, I tapped Control because that leaves a copy of the starting face behind. So let's do that again. I click once to start, tap Control or Option on the Mac to leave a starting face behind, and then I'll snap it to the other side of my window. So anything important in your plan is what we're going to snap to. I'll click once to pick it up or to start, tap Control or Option on the Mac, and then snap it to this wall. Click once to pick it up or start, tap Control or Option on the Mac to toggle leaving a starting face behind, and then snap it to my wall. So you can see that I'm leaving these vertical edges behind, and that's kind of what helps me create the rest of my floor plan. So it allows me to turn corners, and if with a little bit of practice you can get really fast at this technique, and it makes it very easy to extrude and reproduce a floor plan rather than trying to patch somebody else's CAD work, which really never turns out the way you want it to. So this is the ideal way to reproduce CAD drawings. So I'll just do complete that floor there. So now you can see we've also got these interior walls, and I'm actually going to back that up just a bit. So we're just doing our exterior walls to start. And same rules of drawing in SketchUp apply. You know, I'm deleting some of these surfaces and creating surfaces, so I'll get rid of those. So we're just going to do the exterior walls right now. And so what do we do now when we want to create our windows? So we can use our Move Copy tool, and let's say I want to make a copy of this edge straight up by 2 feet. So I'll hover on the edge, click once to pick it up, tap Control or Option on the Mac to toggle my copy command, and I want to move straight up on the blue axis. So usually what I do, I have a good habit of holding down Shift to lock my axis. I'll let go of the mouse and type in, I'll let go of the mouse and type in 24, enter. So I copied that up by exactly 2 feet. Let's make another copy. So to make a copy with my Move tool, I'm going to hover on an edge, click once to pick it up, tap Control or Option on the Mac to toggle my copy command. Once I find my blue axis, I can let go and type in 5 apostrophe enter. Alright, so now we've got our window set in there. Now, I also want to add my door here, so I'll just kind of zoom in on that bottom edge, click once to pick it up, tap Control or Option on the Mac. I can also tap my up arrow key. If I tap my up arrow key, it locks my blue axis, and all I need to do now is define the height. So I'll come over here and work with a window I've already set, so that's at 7 feet. Now I'll use my eraser tool to kind of clean this up a little bit. And then I'm also going to clean up some of the edges on the inside here, and it looks like I kind of swiped over those a little too heavy, so I'll patch that with my line tool. And you want to make sure that you get rid of any edges on the inside before you punch your holes through. So now I can use my push-pull tool. I can click once on the door here to start and push it back until it snaps to that back face and click there, and that punches a hole through there. Next, I can hover on this guy, and the push-pull tool has a memory. I can double click, and that's going to remember that I pushed it back, I think it was 5.5 inches. I'll just do it again. So that makes it real quick and easy. With this technique, you do generate a lot of extra little edges, so we just need to use our eraser tool. And you can actually click and drag over multiple edges, and that helps erase a little bit quicker. So just kind of get that guy cleaned up, and we can come back here and do the same thing. I'll use my Move Copy tool, make a copy of this guy up, and I'm going to snap to that door I've already created, and then this guy maybe we'll say like 96 inches. I'll use my eraser tool to clean up some more of these. And then again, I should be able to just double click, and it still remembers that the last push-pull I did was the distance of that wall. Alright, so now we've created our exterior walls here. Now ideally what we want to do is keep things kind of broken into nice clean groups. So what I like to do is I will triple click, so 1, 2, 3, to select all connected geometry, and then I'll right click and choose Make Group. So now this group is separate from everything else in the model. And what I like to do is I will basically define my exterior shell, and then I'll go in here and let's start working again. I'll use my rectangle tool to start off, and maybe I'll come up by 9 feet to assume that there's like a foot of structure for the floor. So same concept here. I'm going to use my push-pull tool, click once to start, tap Control or Option on the Mac, and then just start defining all of those important points in my model, and that allows me to turn corners and leave cutouts for doors and all that. Now when we get to a situation like this where we have a turn, typically I find it's best to just trace it. So I could just use my line tool. I might just draw a line like straight back here and just trace these guys. That way I don't have to do a bunch of fancy moves. So this one I will, in fact, I need to draw my line in here. There we go. So I'll just pull this guy straight up, pull this guy straight up. I'll pull this one up to 7 feet and then do it again and tap Control. That way I can punch a hole through it. And notice too that when I use my eraser tool, my CAD plan is locked, so I'm not accidentally deleting that. Alright, so then you'll notice too that these surfaces are kind of this purple color, and that's just the default material has a front and a back color applied to it. So if you want to be really thorough, we can just right click on a surface and choose reverse, and that way you can get it so that all of your fronts are facing out. And let's pull this guy along here to kind of finish it off. So again, I tap Control to leave that copying, leave a starting face behind. And then what I would do, even though we're not quite finished, I think everybody would get the idea here. Then we're just gonna make a copy up at 7 feet and pull that guy back through and start punching the holes in my interior walls. And I also want to make sure that my interior walls, I can triple click, right click, and make group. So now whenever I want to work on my interior walls, I just need to double click into that group and I can still work on it. It's just that it's nice and separated and from the rest of my model, so that really keeps things nice and clean. And then also that gives me the ability to hide. I can right click on my exterior walls and hide all of those at one time. So the more groups you make in a model, really the more organized it's going to be in the end. So don't hesitate to make a ton of groups and really just break it down into the elements of your model, as far as like trees should be in a group, maybe shrubs should be in a group, walls and things like that. So that is how we can model off of a CAD DWG.